Good morning and welcome back to Cannabis Canada with Jason Wilcox. It is April Fool's 2019. So if any of y'all seen some purple cats running down the street, then there's probably a reason for that, or anything else that might have been done to you today. As part of April Fool's, many of us will remember that April Fool's was the date the government said to destroy all of our licenses. And it was supposed to be April Fool's on us, and we were able to flip the script on them and retain our licenses. So yeah, I was able to research finally and find the information on the NHP numbers, natural health food product numbers, and stuff that they're trying to get for cannabis, and what the restrictions are around these edibles. My biggest concern is the end cannabis user that, again, needs the right dose. We ran into this problem in Australia. There wasn't a high enough dose of CBD for Vicky. She'd have to take like 5 of their, because they have it again, 5 nanograms of THC. Here in Canada, they have 10 parts per million, which is basically 10 milligrams. I'm pretty sure if my math's right. I'm not good at math, but 10 milligrams would be the dosage. So that's what we've been talking about on the show, but being able to talk about it versus being able to show it in legislation is another thing. And there's also the confusion around full spectrum CBD versus regular CBD and what exactly that means. And I have talked about it on the show before, but now that more and more people are out talking about CBD, it's become a rallying call. In part because of the World Health Organization reclassifying CBD to be medical. That's a big push. The other part of it is the confusion around CBD extracts and the way that they're done, whether they're done using ethanol-based extraction or whether they're done using CO2 extraction. And ultimately, we all have to remember that CBD residuals, I mean, if you're using a full spectrum base from a hemp plant, then you're going to have maybe only 3% THC, so you're not really going to have much there to get you high anyway, but you are going to get the full spectrum of cannabinoids in what I like to talk about as the entourage effect, where you get the full spectrum of cannabinoids as your body should be getting. It shouldn't be just being fed one individual cannabinoid, in my own opinion. But they cite some good information around that. I've been doing my own testing with high doses of CBD, because there is an article I'm also going to be addressing on the show today that says that CBD at 400, I think they said 400 to 600 milligrams doses, which is basically what I'm taking right now. It's extremely large dose, extremely expensive dose to have to take. It's like taking a full vial of what you would get at your local dispensary and taking one every day. That's basically what I put in my capsules in the morning. Which I've already put one in, but I'll probably do a capsule. I try and do it each show to teach people. And this is the other thing, it goes on, and I'll show you guys in this Health Canada article, it goes on to talk about how they're not allowed to sell us this. So they don't want you to necessarily know certain things. They don't want you to know that you can put a ½ gram inside a capsule, add a little bit of carrier oil, and actually potentially cure yourself from withdrawals from a host of pharmaceuticals. And if you suffer from anxiety or depression or other things, it helps in that respect too. So there's a lot to be said about that, but the government's restriction on it is something that the government restriction on it is something that I didn't expect to quite see, or I didn't expect to see it be the way that it was. I was trying to find it here. There it is. So they're talking about its needing of a drug identification number. Now, for veterinary use, you guys would be surprised that they talk about the authorization. So we're going to get into this. I'm just going to find the parts. I've actually sectioned them out into a Word document as well, which I guess closed on me when I reset everything. In this Word document, we'll be able to, well, again, it's just extracts out of this main document from Health Canada. Shit, it didn't even save it for me. All right, well, I guess we'll have to go right through the article then. All right, so where's that 10% little bastard? This is the trickiest part, is they like to embed this stuff like really deep in their there it is. Okay, I'm going to send this over Oh. There. All right, so if you have a look at it from here, I know I'm scrolled down, but if you look at the very top, you will see that it is www.canada.ca. So this isn't some rogue site, some, you know, anarchist site just trying to scare you guys. This is reality of the government of Health Canada, and the reason this applies to, I believe this opens up a challenge, is because Health Canada has no business interfering with R.V. Smith in relation, in my own opinion, my interpretation of R.V. Smith is that we can have cannabis in all of its forms. They didn't say in what doses. They just said in all of its forms because there was simply no harm. It was proven that there was no harm. So we could use it in all of its forms. But it didn't address the constitutional issue of dosing. Dosing lends to money. That's all this is about. Dosing will lend to money. But it goes on to say here, Health Canada is committed to ensuring that prescription drugs list continues to reflect the latest scientific evidence for phytocannabinoids and duplicates of such phytocannabinoids until new evidence shows that they can be safely for the intended therapeutic benefit and patient population without practitioners' oversight. This amendment prevents applications for new prescription drugs, natural health products, or veterinary health products that contain phytocannabinoids other than THC at a maximum of 10 parts per million, or duplicates. Health Canada encourages clinical research in this area and is committed to the fair and evidence research-based approach to oversight, cannabis-based, blah, blah, blah. This is one thing that really stuck with me. I'm going to flip back over here for a sec because I know this can be a little agitating for people. Just while I find the other, that's a 10 parts per million. I'm pretty sure, please correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe 10 parts per million is 10 milligrams. Again, per whatever vial, if it's a vial, a container, whatever it is that you're going to sell as one unit, it can't contain more than 10 parts per million. And that's your oil, whatever it is that you're making, you know, it can't contain more than that. And that's a very fractionally low dosage. And I don't think really going to be that effective for chronic users of cannabis and CBD. And I believe CBD has been fractioned off at 30%. I haven't been able to find that, or 30 milligrams, sorry. So I'm assuming it would be 30 parts per million. Instead of 10 parts per million, it would be 30 parts per million for CBD that they would allow. And then they also talk in this article about that 3% that I often talk about this because in order to grow hemp, you have to have 3% minimum. You know, like, or maximum, sorry, in your product, in your hemp. That's why it's GMO'd, quite frankly. It's what I don't want to see happen to cannabis. But when we think about that factor going on, that's a huge. There's a reason there's no DIN number, drug identification number, or natural health food product number issued to cannabis yet. There's a reason for this. It's all happening. 7 parts per million gas plant. Okay, so right here we'll tell you even more. This will just reinforce what I was basically just saying, but you'll see what I got highlighted here. Going forward, check here. Let me just grab this again. Now, going forward, the new legislative framework will maintain a similar distinction. Phytocannabinoids will be listed on the human and veterinary prescription drug list. Now, do you read the language there? Phytocannabinoids will be listed on the human and veterinary prescription drug list. As I've always said, doctors only authorize. They do not prescribe in this country. Anyway, it also goes on to say, with limited exceptions to allow permitted parts of the cannabis plant to be included in NHPs and VHPs. So NHP is natural health food product numbers. I'm not sure what VHPs is off the top of my head, and I don't see it here. But once again, it'll go on to reinforce what I already was saying. These exceptions require that the permitted parts of the plant to contain no more than 10 parts per million THC and no isolate No isolated or concentrated phytocannabinoid. That's highly suggestive that they're saying you can't have isolate. Like I just showed you, I have. But the Supreme Court of Canada said you can have cannabis in all of its forms. And here's Health Canada telling us, no, you can't. Let me flip this back over. Just I don't want to drive you guys nuts with seeing me trying to find. It's a very long article, and they embed this stuff in here. And this is where the controversy meets the concrete. You know, you look shit up, you back it up, and if you're going to say it, you back it up. So you go grab the information and you show people, look, this is what Health Canada is saying. This is not what I'm saying. This is what I'm reporting on, and doing my best to get that information out there. Because it's going to be us, we the people, that are going to suffer in the long run. It's going to take 10 years longer to free this plant, truly free it. Because it's not free when it's not being researched due to lack of funds and due to Reefer Madness 2.0 and due to recreational profiteering greed. It truly is the green rush of 2016, 17, 18, 19. It's a green rush. It's like the internet bubble. It's just weed. And if people like Martha Stewart and others in Snoop Dogg signing on with these big corporations is an indicator of that, then I don't know what is. Here's the other one here. Authorization of drug identification number for the notice of compliance to be issued to the sponsor. Food and Drug Regulation. Health Canada scientists will review the evidence and determine the risks associated with the drug, applicable and some of its benefits. Okay, so here's another good example. Everybody talks to me about Health Canada and how we're medical, and I say, well, we're not actually medical. We're just authorized by a doctor. They just call it medical. We know it's medical, but they say it's pseudoscience. So here's something from Health Canada by themselves. I'm going to send this one over. Same document. These guys really dig deep when they get in there, dig deep into their documents. Health Canada scientists will then review evidence to determine whether the risks associated with the drug are acceptable in light of potential benefits. If they are, and if the drug has proven, to be effective for the proposed indications, Health Canada will authorize the drug for sale in Canada. Upon authorization, the drug identification number, which we were just talking about, the DIN number, the long-awaited DIN number, so they can actually tax legally what they're actually illegally taxing right now. But anyway, enough about that. Sorry, sidetrack. Health Canada will authorize the drug for sale in Canada. Upon authorization, the drug identification number and notice of compliance will be issued to the sponsor, being said LP. Just translating. At least as best I can, anyway. My phone is buzzing. Sorry, people in the morning. Okay, so that's what I wanted to show on that part. Anyway, that just lends back to people wondering what's coming out as if we do not. If we do not continue to share the information that we share on shows like this and continue to get out there, I fear that a lot of this stuff, again, with time, the internet is a leveling of the playing field between the government and us, quite frankly. The internet allows us to share this information, and it's some of it's pseudoscience, some of it's anarchist science, some of it's justifiable. I want to hate somebody for some reason. Science, it is what it is. Legalization has basically torn apart the cannabis culture of Canada. Many of my friends and stuff from over the years who fought alongside me, many of us find ourselves doing different things, and some of them very progressive and very good. And other people finding ourselves just kind of wondering, what just happened to our country with respect to legalization. That's some of the harder stuff to really deal with, because legalization, none of us expected increased criminalization, and then not only increased criminalization, but you have you don't only have increased criminalization, but you also have basically the marginalization continued marginalization of end said user of cannabis. You're either being ridiculed for work, you're scared of losing your job, you don't want to be frowned upon, so you're acting like a crackhead, going in an alley, feeling like that's the only place safe to smoke. And in reality, it almost only is. If you smoke outside, if you smoke in your parks, if you smoke anywhere in some cities in Canada, there's really nowhere you can smoke, quite frankly, legally speaking. When there's a Clean Air Act, it applies to all the air in the city, so the alleys included. So theoretically, you could get a ticket. So it's these little things, yet they're very large things that cause problems for us as we continue with Canada and with dealing with stuff like drug identification numbers. This is stuff that we've been talking about for years. Why hasn't? Well, they couldn't put a DNI number or a DIN number onto, or an NHP number. They couldn't put that on marijuana based on its name. You can't call something by its non-botanical name and then expect to have reference or respect for it. That's not going to happen until you actually call it by its botanical name. Even doctors, like they said, we can't really look this up. I don't like signing for this. The reason the doctors don't like signing, and what they often don't tell you, is it's simply because it's not in their books. They're asked to sign for something that they don't know if it's safe. The cannabis you're growing at home, they don't know if it's safe. But we had to go to court to prove that growing the cannabis plant in general is safe across the board. Period. So anyway, that's an important part of it. 16 minutes into the show, and at least I got the core part out. We do have an article that we'll be touching on coming up, which will be this one for those interested that were wondering about full spectrum CBD. I do have that in the write-up for that purpose, to make sure that we can address that, so that people, as I'm still trying to wrap my head around it. Believe me, this gets hard, even though I have access to some good doctors and other stuff. That 3% rule is very important in hemp, because if you're over 3% THC, you cannot grow it. You can't grow that strain of hemp. So you're basically forced to buy Monsanto's hemp strains and grow those at whatever they are. But it's sad that it can't be over 3% THC, because it drives it down. But the only good thing is the highest amount of CBD is found in hemp. Next would be ruderalis, next would be autoflowers, and then would be all your hybrids in between, including your indicas and sativas and CF Gannicas, etc. Just based on what we know about their profiles in present day. This article also goes on to talk about the importance of the entourage effect, which I've talked about, like taking this alone, which the government is not going to sell to us. So again, I just showed you guys where in the legislation they're not going to be allowed to sell us pure isolate. They're only going to sell you oils that has this in it. That's all they're going to do. They're going to do the same thing that I show you on the morning show. I do a pill and I show you what Vicky actually taught me, and that's what I show you guys. I try and teach that out. It's because for me, I'm testing myself on it more, because it's about pain. It's about pain that normally can't be reached, and it's really hard to explain it any other way. Downside to it, is you talk fast. And I have had people say, hey, you're talking pretty fast. Are you okay? And I'm like, what do you mean, am I okay? And of course I'm talking fast, but I don't, likely because I just came off a 2-hour show, and which won't be 2 hours anymore, by the way. But anyway, it came off a 2-hour show, and took probably a gram over that period of time, and of CBD isolate with carrier oil, and that's probably why I'm talking fast. So again, those out there that say that you don't get high, I would argue that you get medicated, and that can often be conflicted with being high very easily, because being high is being medicated, often one and the same. To what degree it's, that's to each their own. I'm gonna jump back over. I haven't even looked at the chat to see what's going on or what's going on. I haven't really wanted to jump in here yet. But good morning to everybody that's watching, and I hope you guys are having a wonderful morning. And it is Monday. It's Hump Day, so it's getting over that original hard part of the week. I brought this plant out again. I showed you guys last week. I said if you're growing them properly, they should be growing about an inch a day. So you can see how some of these here are more than ready to clone. It's also fully reverted back now. So it's taken a full 2.5 weeks to revert back from a full flowering state to a full vegetative state. Just to give you an idea of what you're looking at if you're thinking about re-vegging your plants. So that's a very important important aspect to understand. And the feds are also the federal government in Canada anyway, they're tweaking. When I say tweaking the language, I have this in the write-up. I talk about, I think the federal government's tweaking the language. They really are, in the context of saying that, well, you can only have this much cannabis. Well, in the Supreme Court of Canada, in R.V. Smith, the court said patients can have cannabis in all of its forms. They didn't say how much, how little. That was never constitutionally defined, which is why we may need to go back to court again. Because I think the only disservice is being done to Canadians, not necessarily medical patients, because I don't think it's going to apply to medical patients. They're going to have a hard time pressing this after Allard. You know, the judge had to read so many books that we put on them after Allard that honestly it would be very hard for them. They'd be hard pressed in trying to do anything to medical patients with regard to dosing. Now, can they do anything? Again, this goes back to, if I end up in court for why I have CBD isolate, you know, it becomes a question of, can they actually put me in front of a judge, you know, based on R.V. Smith's constitutional decision? Is my constitutional rights protected to have isolate that licensed producers aren't allowed to give me, but it's able to actually help me? So this is just one example of the suppression that you guys are facing, I'm facing, and it's really not cool when you're facing these different things, because it can really it can really deter. This is my biggest probably worry, and it shouldn't be a worry, because over time the market will naturally dictate itself. But it's always a worry that we're not looking enough at the medical, and the government's very good at getting us to look left and everybody else moves right, you know, and they do that. They're very, very good at that. So it really is what it is. And yeah, for anybody throwing out the jokes in there, I'm trying to stay away from reading anything so I don't get pulled into it, because it is April Fool's. So there you go. It's one of those things where I've got a few messages already this morning where it's, I know they're April Fool's jokes, but they definitely caught me on first glance, and then I had to move on from there. Civil disobedience. Yeah, that's it. Well, civil disobedience is the very act of sharing information. Civil disobedience is the very act of standing up to an oppressive system. If you have an oppressive, I don't know, an oppressive regime like we're dealing with now, the Cannabis Act Canada. Anybody can read it, and unless you're a medical patient, even then you're not being looked after. Your educational issues, everything else, you're secondary to what in essence is a monopoly for money. So that's the biggest problem that we face. Man, more people getting timed out on the show. I like that little unique button on YouTube. Timeout. Anyway, I'm just going to take a 1 minute break, because I really do. I have to refill my coffee and reheat it. I got caught off guard. When I get back, I'll continue with talking about, again, shout out to Earl Electric. Again, Drew Edwards back east there I'm using his piece again on today's show. And again, shout out to our sponsors: Green Planet Nutrients, Pacific Northwest Garden Supply, T&B Naturals, Beard Brothers Concentrate, and all the others, if I am just not spewing them out right now off the top of my head as good as I could. Yeah, well, there you go. I'm with you, Dennis. When I get back from break, I will actually I'm going to grab a cap as well when I heat up my coffee, and I'll do another. Again, I'll put together one of these and flip it over to the smaller cam so you guys can get an idea what I'm talking about. The reason I'm showing this is because, again, it's a personal testimonial for me to take to my doctor and to also check my blood work. I want to see if there's CBD negatives. The only good thing about my illness is that they take a full panel of blood work under the hood, and that allows me to know what's going on. So if CBD has done any molecular level changes in my body that is marketable on the blood test, then it'll be something I'll certainly pay attention to. I can't cite in a single month that's just a CBD. All I can do is keep testing that there isn't good, bad, or indifferent, and using high doses of CBD. If you can do that, for me, it's a 30-day trial, and then it's a test. And your blood work doesn't lie. That's the one thing I've learned with my 25 years of illness. Your blood work never lies. So if you can use your blood work to actually prove anecdotal science on cannabis and its relation to being able to work with the body, then that's a wonderful thing. Here's a video of when I first met Vicky. This gives me about 10 minutes to... Actually, no, I won't even get this one going. Let me see here. I have nothing really loaded up here. Man, I just need a coffee. I don't need 9 minutes. Three minutes. Shit. It is what it is. I'm gonna throw this on, and I don't even know if I want to throw it on. I'm not gonna throw anything on at this point. I'm just gonna keep going. The other thing that, again, the biggest problem I think that we need to get into before we jump off, the reason I wanted to go to commercial break, honestly, I definitely got to heat up my coffee. I'm also going to catch up with these comments. There's a lot of stuff that's going on with the Cannabis Act of Canada, and now these new amendments, which we talked about. I've said before, I'm worried about the new amendments for 2020. So even though we're early on in 2019, I know you guys are thinking it's crazy to think that far ahead. It's really not. You know, in 2012, it took till 2016 to get our gardens back. It took 4 fucking years to turn these guys around. So trust me, it's not that big a deal to think that far ahead. To think they've already got pre-planned plans to do stuff in the future, additional amendments. And if they do additional amendments to the program, then that just makes it that much worse for everybody involved. And that's probably one of my biggest concerns that I gotta face. So I think we all gotta face, and it is what it is. Sorry, I got racket banging off in my house again. I'm gonna go for a coffee break, and I'll see you guys in about I guess 5 minutes, 7 minutes. I'll see if I can get this Cannabis Day. I play this for one purpose and one purpose only. It's because a lot of the people are RBC activists who've done a lot over the years, and nothing can be taken away from anybody involved in making this video, taking part in this video. Nothing can be taken away from these people, because these people stood their ground on Cannabis Day and held it. And I'm proud to call some of them my friends, and I'm proud to call other ones my associates. You know, and it's that simple. It goes to show what a cannabis culture can do as a collective, and yeah, and it allows me time to grab my coffee, and then we'll get into the plant. We'll get into also on the second half this year in water. There's a reason I did this. It was more just there was this discussion, will a plant grow in water? Well, yes, it will grow in water. We understand this part. The question is it stressed if there's no oxygen getting to the rooting system once the rooting system has developed? And these are all questions that we'll get into in the second half of the show. We're just approaching the half-hour mark here. So, yeah, there it is. And here's that video. So once again, this is where the police tried to stop Cannabis Day here in British Columbia in downtown Vancouver, and you'll recognize some of the activists, I'm sure. And it's been played many times on here, but it's been played many times because I want you to pay attention when you see the people on the ground getting maced. I want you to look at why they're getting maced. They're all locking arms, and there's a good 12, 13 people that all jumped in and did what was traditionally for the past 15 years what we do here in BC. We lock arms, and we make them arrest all of us or pull us apart. Instead of pulling us apart, they just got tired of using their manpower, and they decided to use mace, and it was wrong. So that's the story behind this show, but most importantly, it shows you how to stand your ground once again and not allow certain things to get shut down, or certain things to get get put down. And when activists stand their ground, things can get changed. And this is literally, I picked the shortest video just so people know. This literally is a 5-minute clip. 1 minute I say I picked the shortest one, and then I can't find it. Yeah, Cannabis Day. Yeah, it's about a 6-minute clip. So 6 minutes, I'll be back. Grab your dabbers, grab whatever, and let's get into talking a little bit about cannabinoids, and most important about CBD and CBD full spectrum, and get into that hemp article. We'll see you in a bit. Welcome back to Cannabis in Canada with Jason Wilcox. We're sitting here at the Art Gallery. It's 8:30 in the morning. We got a few people that are standing around that are saying they're not going to go anywhere. And believe me, there's going to be a lot more as the crowd grows. So will the activists continue to make their moves.
Just remember me the right way. Want you to keep in mind today better than yesterday. And for my fellow companions, all I could do was pray. But remember me like your memory, just like a fragment of a kin, friend, or enemy. So many enemies trying to get into me. I'm just a broken part, feeling detached off. Cause trying to get in this game is like a scratch off.
Opus, otherwise known as McMahon. Brother, we go back a lot of years. You know, West Coast is in the house. What do you think of what the hell's going on with this?
It was interesting. You know, the tent started going up. The city officials came over, and I noticed they had the biggest guy they could find from the city wearing the Viz vest. But we stood up for our rights. They had the cops sort of all hanging around the outside, so there's their backup, obviously, in case, like, what are we thinking? We're gonna jump the city guy?
We're just here assembling on the stairs outside the Vancouver Art Gallery. I'm trying to have a peaceful protest here today. The city knows that, but it looks like they are out in force. Just remember my name.
Why aren't you guys on the perimeter? You were on the perimeter before, and now you're right in the crowd with a camera. What's the reasoning for the camera in the crowd? You should be on the perimeter because now you're engaging the activists, you're engaging our cameras. Go back to the perimeter where you belong.
We're just keeping the peace.
Peace. I'm amazed because it's been 15 years we've been doing this and we've never ever seen this sort of provocative stance from the police.
To have that police presence there and to use those intimidation and harassment tactics the way they did is outrageous.
There was non-communication. You know, we didn't even know.
And he said, if you keep selling cannabis, we're going to arrest you.
It was an organized effort. It was almost like it was rehearsed. It was almost like it was funded from not the VPD.
I was scared that they were actually going to get away and deter people from Cannabis Day.
I said, you know, we're going to start selling cannabis. That's our protest. You know, the laws against selling cannabis are why we have Cannabis Day. So he said that he understood that and that they were going to be realistic.
Back, he's under arrest.
These guys got extremely violent, extremely fast.
Shame on the city of Vancouver. Shame on the VPD.
We have no need for all these officers. They're worrying all of these people here. You should send them back somewhere else away from here. We don't need to have this police presence.
Knowing that we were not violent and they continue to push us. And then when passive civil disobedience and passive resistance is implied, why use mace?
We were not violent. You know, I mean, it was excessive. They were trying to push me back.
Look, you guys don't need to be here. You're causing problems by being here. You could be inciting a riot.
Don't let any, listen to me. Anybody at that booth, you don't let anybody give out a dab. You tell them all, don't give out a freaking dab. Don't share any joints with anybody that you don't know. Period. It's very important right now because they got us all. They're watching us and they know some of us just left. Welcome back to Cannabis in Canada with Jason Wilcox. I've got Owen Smith here and Ted Smith, and we are on the island. Guys, what do you think about what's going on here in Vancouver?
It is a sad day, and I wouldn't wish that on anyone, but you know, our soldiers have, you know, stood their ground, and hopefully we'll be able to move ahead and have a better Cannabis Day next year.
This prohibition causes more and more pain and suffering as all of its horrible parts are exposed.
Cannabis Day, its roots are in medical, and clearly the MMPR just got ruled unconstitutional. So how dare they try to step in and shut down Cannabis Day?
So sad after 20 years of peaceful events that the city would do this. It's not, you know, the influence of cannabis causing all this harm. It's the law, again, just causing harm in people's lives.
The prohibition that's held up by the federal government is causing all of these problems. And Vancouver City is trying to look good for the government by trying to crack down on these people, but it looks terrible. We have a poor, you know, sick people who are being stepped on in the street.
It's just the saddest day in cannabis activism in this country's history.
Activists will unite because police took a bad stand today in doing what they did in Vancouver, and I think it is a sad day for Canada.
We're going to continue on this together. We got to stick together.
Hey yo, it's Paradise Splits, sipping on a fifth, looking in the sky like this is where I love to live.
Bad stand today. All right, welcome back. There is that delay in YouTube that always messes me up, and I know that we drop off so many members when we go to a commercial break, but I had to get more coffee. Had to get a dab into me, and it is what it is. So I'm not sure what's going on with Be Damned. He's one of our winners and a regular viewer of the show, so I'm not sure what he's saying, but we'll see when he comes back out of or back on the show, because he just received his winnings from last week's show, you know, just the other day. So I'm not sure what got him in trouble, but there's administrators for a reason. So now I got back onto the show. We wanted to continue the talk and keep it going with this time switch it over to just a little bit of happy talk. Again, being Monday, I'm going into my CBD thing. Either way, it's got to continue for my own peace of mind. As I try it. So again, I got my basic empty CBD cap, which isn't like it's a super hard thing to figure out. What I will be able to do though by opening this up is hopefully be able to show you guys a little bit better what I'm talking about. Yeah, like that. I guess that way I can show you. You can just see it's a basic regular cap. I do this every show for a reason. And then you got your basic CBD powder. And it's crystalline, but again, it's food grade crystalline. You know, if you want to look at whether it's crystals under a microscope, that's a choice. So you can go ahead and look under a microscope. Isolate's isolate. It comes in so many different forms. I believe the cheaper FDA forms, you're going to find the more shiny, crystally, looks like crystal meth type stuff. And you're going to find the more powdery, looks like other substances kind of stuff with this. And again, in a cap, you're looking, if you fill it right up, you're looking at literally 5.5. So you're looking at a little over a half gram. So I try to do 0.4. That's what I've been aiming at as a morning dose, and 2 doses. So I'm using just under a gram of CBD just in my morning dose when I get up, and that's testing again and testing against shit. Forgot my oil. testing against, most importantly, testing against resistance, testing against the things that people don't talk about as much. And that's important. Oh shit, I should be showing that up there. So you can see all that fucking powder in there. I don't know if you guys can see that or not, because that light makes it super bright. But that's about 0.4 in your cap. So of course you do need to have some oil as a carrier. I talk about this so much because it's so important. It's your bioavailability. If you can make your CBD 3 times more potent or more bioavailable for your body to use, why not? I mean, why short yourself? That's part of the reason we teach what we teach, and we do what we do, because no LP is going to teach you this, nor can they supply you with any of this stuff. That's the sad part. And the ability to just make CBD isolate at home is just not there yet. It will be in the future. I do believe that, because of how I know it's made now. Knowing that it's made with a rotovape, knowing that it's made using ethanol or CO2 extraction. These are things that are laboratory things, but some of our friends, as you guys know, Beard Brothers and others, have been leading the way for years, you know, doing our learning in the underground. You know, and now we've got actual lab coats and people that are actually qualified to teach us, working with us in that capacity, and I think that's amazing. So yeah, and this morning's show has been it's been a really interesting show. Had I'm assuming the bounce in numbers for our viewers was an interesting bounce, but that was it was good. It's good to see. The one thing I noticed about YouTube, and you know, it really sucks, I'm not sure how you can check your analytics, but we lose all of our comments. Even though we have lots of audience engagement in our chat, we lose all that after the second day. So if you guys go back tomorrow, you won't find your comments anymore. And I thought YouTube had fixed that. That's part of the reason I started streaming only to YouTube. I figured they had saved that, because when we have winners on shows and stuff, if it gets disputed, then we want to make sure we're able to pull up the record and say, here's exactly the sequence, you know, timestamps. Damn, I must have put more than usual in there, or just not enough oil, because this is taking longer than usual to properly make. But if it's gelatin. No, they're made of these capsules are your standard. I believe they're just gelatin. These are your standard capsules, and you know, people can say what they want. I've been using these for a couple years with Vicky and never seen one. We've seen them degrade if you store them for, you know, a month or something at room temperature in your thing. You'll start to see them degrade over time. That's for sure. They're not meant to be stored that way. You know, they're not meant to be long term. That's why I suggest tinagers, and I often suggest using light proof bottles so you don't degrade your THC. This is more if you're doing it on the spot, like I am, testing dosing. Most people aren't testing 600 milligram, 400 milligram dosing. That's what I'm doing right now. I'm using pure. I don't even know what the dosing would be in milligrams. I have no idea what 0.4 pure 99.9 or 99.5% crystalline, what pure crystalline with a little bit of carrier oil, what that converts to. But I can guarantee you it's probably that dose that they say helps with heroin withdrawal. So I want to test some of these things. I want to know for myself, is this real? Is this not real? Because the one thing I do have is access to what the labs have access to. And if you're wondering what I'm doing, this is how long it takes to break down the CBD molecule. The CBD molecule, as you'll, I gotta switch cameras again. As you'll see in this, I gotta get rid of that too. As you'll see in the footage, it's the same thing. The CBD molecule itself has just started to break down now. So you'll see it turns into this kind of goopy, thick sauce. But as long as the crystals have broken down into the oil, that's what matters, so that you know that you're carrying not crystals to your stomach lining, but rather an oil that then hits the stomach lining and allows bioavailability to be 3 times stronger than it would normally be. Where the hell did my camera go? There. All right. So I'm going to now just go ahead and take it. So... You know, it's funny. It's funny you say that a hemp farm would be dope. There was so many years where I was anti-hemp. I didn't know about CBD back then, but so many years I was anti-hemp because I always said the hemp fields ruin it for outdoor growers that live in Saskatchewan or any of the hemp field regions, because if a male gets loose, if a hermaphrodite gets loose, pollen gets loose and goes out and can pollinate your fields. And equally, the hemp farmers are just as pissed, because if you go and they pay all this money for a strain of hemp that is, you know, is supposed to be good morning, John Barefellow. Thanks for tuning in, bro. It's good to see you on the show. Yeah, what was I just saying? The hemp plant. I used to laugh at it only because I didn't know any better. I was like, man, the only thing I didn't want was to end up with headache weed. So I tried to stay away from ruderalis, and I tried to stay away from autoflowers. It was just my experience back then. And now to see it come so far, as to have, you know, us now isolating cannabinoids down to the point that this is only available. And again, it's because THC has to be under 3% CB or THC to be grown. That's where, again, I keep pointing to this, but GMO is possible. You know, if they can do it with hemp, why couldn't they do it with cannabis? They has to be under 3%. So there's only certain strains of hemp that are legal to be grown in this country, period. And it has to be under that percent. And no different than certain extracts. And like I've shown today on today's legislation from Health Canada, that, you know, they're going to be under 10 parts per million, or they have to be 10 parts per million or under in any of their extracts, edibles, and the like. Oh, right on. Johnny, you know, I've been digging into this, and you remember when I used to pick on CBD, I used to think the government was trying to trick us, bro. And that's just not the case. Now what we're seeing is CBD is doing so much good things for our people, our bodies, and I think that's the biggest thing. You see, it's one thing for me to witness it with other people and other patients, but it's another thing when I actually start to feel it for not only myself, but even more so read more hardcore literature, like the World Health Organization coming out talking about CBD before talking about THC. They knew about CBD longer than they known about THC. That's what's funny. They identified and isolated CBD before THC. So when it comes to talking about this, I think we can also look over to the article. Again, the CBD article in and of itself. Let me just pull it up here. Now this article here, I'm going to scroll to the top because it's not fair just to jump from there. You can go to the top of this. The big difference between CBD isolate and full spectrum. Here is where you guys can grab the link. I know that's super long to write down or try to memorize. But again, as you scroll down through it, you know, it goes through about what you need to know, and you know, conditioned CBD may help. You know, we went through this. Now there's a good example of what I was talking about, the cheap CBD that I think it looks like crystal meth. This is the stuff they have in China. You can get it for $5 a gram, and it's available at your local dispensary if you're not careful. Now stay away from the shiny stuff. I don't know how else I can put that. Now, can I take that and smash it down and make it look like powder that I have? Absolutely not. There's just too many byproducts. That being said, to each their own. As you continue through it, again, if you do your research on CBD, you'll find out most CBD is right here, like the stuff I've got, 99% pure. Now, the problem is that from there, it falls off. From there, it drops down to different people. Now, if you use a full spectrum, if you use, again, what I believe in the most, which is a THC, CBD combination, or a full spectrum, all 113 phytocannabinoids combination, feeding your endogenous system. And I'm sure Johnny would agree with me, anybody would agree with me, that's really where it's at. Dabbing CBD is something, I'm glad, John, you tried it yesterday, because honestly, I've tried snorting it because I heard guys say mucous membrane. I don't give a shit. I'll try anything, man, you know, just to see how it works. And CBD is still this wonder phytocannabinoid / cannabinoid. That's the one thing I'll say, is that it's a wonderful, wonderful thing in that respect. But then we get into what is the difference between, so okay, here, I'll highlight what I'm going to, really, this is what we're looking at. Users of CBD can choose between CBD isolate or full spectrum CBD. Full spectrum CBD contains the full profile of cannabinoids and other compounds present in the cannabis plant. This includes CBD and other cannabinoids, essential oils such as terpenes, and many other compounds. As the extraction as a not filtered, small amounts of THC chemical that causes a high and may remain. However, must have less than 0.3% to be legally grown. So the THC, so the THC content will still be minimal. Our very own expertly crafted Good Vibes 250 milligrams CBD oil is a full spectrum blend, yet contains less than 3% THC. That's where, again, we want to talk about full spectrum. I'll tell you that there's people who have tried the oil that I make at home here, and the oil that I make, whether it's the straight CBD oil that, you know, it's if we got our math right, it should be about 1,000 milligrams per vial, and the THC. The problem is I've quad infused it, so I've infused it 4 times, so like 2 ounces over and over and over. So you know, you got 8 ounces. 8 ounces of weed extracted into this one, batch of oil, and then it's known as quad infused. So it's so super infused that it puts people through the pinhole. If they're recreational weekend warriors, they take it and they end up knocking themselves out and waking up freaking hungry as shit, or even worse, they end up going upstairs and puking because they go through the pinhole and they don't have a good trip. That's what seems to be the problem. When I talk about full cannabinoid extract, I mean like what we're seeing Tilray put out in Australia, where they've got, except a higher dosage of course, but where they got 25 milligrams of THC and they've got 25 milligrams of CBD. I would take it a step further and say, why not have the full spectrum? Other than, I could get it, shelf life, stability testing, all the shit that they have to do to make sure that it's legal on shelves so that they don't get sued. I get all that part, but we need to ask ourselves stuff like that. With the known benefits of having 113, and actually it has them right here. It's funny, I very rarely am actually talking, and I can back up what I'm talking about. So the benefits of full spectrum CBD is right here. It goes on to say, in the cannabis plant there are around 113 cannabinoids. So phytocannabinoids being in the plant, they turn into cannabinoids once into your body, and you're feeding your endogenous system. That being said, phytocannabinoids are found in the plant. Currently known to science, these include CBD and THC, which are the 2 most prevalent in the plant. The cannabis plant also produces terpenes, flavonoids, and numerous other plant compounds. I often talk about flavonoids. Now, the reason I wanted to point this out is because I often talk about flavonoids. People say, well, what is he talking about? He already knows such thing as a flavonoid. And I'm like, flavonoid, flavor, terpenes. Now, I don't know why it's not nosines or whatever, but smellines, whatever. But terpenes is the essential smell. They're the essential oils, that reside outside the trichome. We all know this, when we research it. So once you understand, terpenes and flavonoids are one and the same, but different. There's flavonoids and then there's terpenes. And one accounts for the taste. When you take that dry pull before you even lit your joint yet, and you can actually taste the flavor of good organically grown weed, or just good weed in general. That's what I'm talking about, flavonoids. And then terpenes is when you open that bag and you're like, damn, that's dank. That's the shit. That's what I'm talking about. Again, flavonoids and terpenes, and it goes on to list the host of different terpenes. And again, we have to remember, just to give you an idea, if we take off THC, you got CBDA, THCA, CBC, CBDV, CBG, CBN, CBDV, and so forth, till we get to 133 different cannabinoids that they have yet to explore. So when we talk about the entourage effect, it's like saying, okay, all those ones that Jason just named, all of them working together simultaneously. We don't know what that will do. All we know is that one cannabinoid by itself can stop seizures. That's called CBD. We know that one cannabinoid can stimulate your appetite and make you go to sleep. That's called THC. Now, what can the other 100 and what does that leave us? 111? What does that leave the other 111 phytocannabinoids? What would they do when they feed the endogenous system? None of us know. This is what makes me a geek about science and geeky about science. But I believe that we are coming closer to the end of the show. We got about 4 minutes left in the show here. So if there's any questions, comments, or anything, I'm going to get back over the chat. I get ramped up. One other thing too is just in closing, last 4 minutes real quick, RCMP are going to be investigating that Winnipeg-based producer who sold the unauthorized weed. Now, I've been calling for this on my show because if you're going to continue to investigate medical patients, goddamn it, start to investigate the goddamn monopoly that's messing this country up. And we cannot allow it. I don't care who Bonafide, I don't even know who Bonafide is. I really don't care. You know, if you're going to call people organized crime, then go after them for organized crime. Somehow Tweed and Bedrocan got off to abandon their 1 ton of weed they left up in Kamloops in BC. John Conroy, myself, we haven't forgot about it. What can we do about it? Probably nothing. We're waiting for the police to actually release what was seized. They're trying to say it's still under investigation. Well, that can only last. The statute of limitation is only so long that they're going to be able to get away with this shit. Did you want a dab? Let's have a dab. Well, you don't have to sit there smoking hash.
No, it's flowers.
Even worse. You don't sit there smoking flower. I mean, there's well, the hash I understand, but flower I don't get. All right. Anyway, Vicky got back from her morning yoga class. She gets dug into this thing, and you know, it's kind of good, and it's kind of it's kind of good, and it's kind of good. That's all I can say. It's anything that improves somebody else's life is a good thing. Again, I try to talk about doing that and try to better improve quality of life of people, and then I don't hear. You got that? It's on. It's yeah. We got CO2 extract. 6 minutes left. Shit, I didn't even get into the goddamn plant yet. But Vicky seems to think that going 2 hours for a show is too long, so we may not want to do 2 hours. That's her suggestion. Talking people's ears off, being bored, but I'm continuing. I'm continuing to report on that main part. To me, which matters is that Bonafide. I told you that we, unlike Kamloops, I hope you don't get away too, because it isn't about anything personal more than Patients of Canada. We're called fire, mold, and organized crime people. You know, we started fires. We, you know, collect mold. We're all gangsters, and that really bothered me. And now you got people backdooring 200 pounds through the back door, and the police don't get involved. How the hell does that happen? I don't care if you've got a legal permit or not. I've got a legal permit. I can't backdoor 200 pounds. Actually, I can, according to new regulations. Anyway, I can't backdoor it, though, for sale. I might be able to backdoor it into my storage and say I've been stockpiling for the past couple of years. That's argumentative, at best, depending on how it's stored, you know. But, but whatever. And we're at the end of the show, I think. I don't know if I'm going to continue running this into 2 hours, because it doesn't do me any justice to run out of content. And though there's lots out there, you guys know how it goes. I'm going to get back into the chat here.
The show's going really good.
Well, we got about 23 people on, but we had up to about 30 people. But we want to keep a morning show going that is busy and active, and I don't know what else to say. At the same time, I am interested in the analytics. That's what bothers me the most, because I want to start the show at 9 o'clock, just so you guys understand what I'm struggling with. It's either start the show at 9 o'clock, stop the show altogether, and just do a once-a-week show. It's the same thing I keep talking about, and I keep saying I should try, but I don't do. And that's my problem. And maybe this is one of those times where I'll just see where it goes here. I got 2 more minutes to decide. But I don't know. You guys want to keep this going, let me know. Or we can just kill it. Again, this is something where it's going to be ongoing. If anybody has looked at the Cannabis Act of Canada, it's extremely long. Go have a read. and then we can really have a great intellectual discussion about cannabis and its effects on people, and in the different aspects that we're being we're quite frankly we're being what's the word, barriers to access. So I don't know how else. A non-reasonable access has not been obtained. I don't know what language would make them resonate the most with the patients of Canada, but the biggest thing that we got going for us right now is that we've got Allard and we've got R.V. Smith, and we've got unity still in the cannabis culture. I don't care. There's been people who have tried to divide us. There's been people trying to pull us apart. I can assure you the Beard Brothers are not gone anywhere. You know, all of my homies, I mean, none of them gone anywhere. They're just building shit out, new projects, new things, and you're gonna see them in the coming year, and I'm very proud of that. I think it's a good way to get it going, and it is what it is. I'm going to take 1 minute here and just make sure what I want to do here, whether we want to kill this or whether we want to run this into the second hour, more for the purpose of knowing whether we want anybody else. Again, eventually it's going to be a 1 hour show. Clearly, this could be killed now. I'm more worried is 9 o'clock going. Here's the thing: time changes. So is 9 a.m. going to reach Ontario, you know, around noon? Because I'm trying to find times that is going to be the best time slot to reach both time zones. It's easy at nighttime because it's 5 o'clock right after work. You know, 5 p.m. BC. It's about 8 p.m. in Ontario. We're still okay with those time periods. However, for the morning show, it's a lot different and a lot harder to dial in the analytics. So people wonder why we do that. That's why. But I'm now 2 minutes over the 1 hour that I wanted to stick it to, and I think I'm gonna go ahead and start trying to stick to my guns instead of overdoing this. And remember, keep your eye out for that move that Health Canada is going to make, which is their next dashing move, which will be to really come after us and start to go after. Let me just see what my analytics are here. Yeah, BMA or BMASV. I want to know that as well. I'm trying to find out what is it that you posted that would get your account blocked. I'm not sure which administrator blocked you, but there would have been a reason for it. So I'm not sure what they posted or what you posted. I was gonna say you've been watching my show for a long time and you recently won on the show. So I'm not sure why you would have been blocked, unless it was misinterpreted or lost in communication. I'm not sure. It's the only good thing about the chat. But 11 a.m. is best for Ontario. See, this is where Med THC, you're actually a good dialect for me to at least get feedback on what's going on in Ontario, because that's honestly, it's surprising when you leave your own province and you go into other parts of the province or other parts of the country and you see that you actually have more supporters in other parts of the country than you do in your own province. So honestly, I've seen my numbers do a much better back east and than I do see doing just a show out here. Like if I do a show at 10 o'clock at night in BC, it's early hours of the morning in Ontario. I ain't got nobody watching, you know, even though it's 10 o'clock at night or 9 o'clock at night. You have to really be on at the right times, and I'm not even sure what to do right now. Just watching these numbers. And again, watching the message. You guys go back through the analytics, and if you guys want to help me with figuring out these analytics, that would be another thing. Because sorry, not figuring out the analytics, but figuring out these time zones, what works best for our supporters mainly. And the hardest part is a lot of people that we had on. We would get 1,000 people watching us on Facebook, and now we're losing that. So again, to me, it's figuring out how do I optimize this without crippling my own show, and that's just it's all about trying to figure out these numbers and figure out everything else. Med THC, if possible, can you unblock Be Damned if possible, pending we find out what's going on. I'm pretty sure I know who put him into a block scenario, and I'm not sure why. So, and again, I would just remind the audience that for future shows, as we try to dial in the show to actually be better for everybody, the only way to do that is to make sure that things don't get lost in translation. Usually, we don't just block and ban people. We actually put people in timeout first. And when we put them in, that's a feature YouTube came up with. I'm not just saying that to be sounding like a jackass, but that's YouTube's own feature. It's called timeout, and you put a person in timeout, and hopefully they realize, okay, I gotta cool my jets. But either way, hopefully you can figure this out, and we can well, the wrench anybody that has a wrench beside there are part of my team, so they're all there to help protect the best interest of the show, to be quite frank. So any of them have the power to put somebody into timeout. I can go back through my log and my analytics and find out who did what and why, or talk to the administrators. It doesn't really matter. But most importantly, one thing we learned on today's show, and the one thing I'm glad I was able to at least bring to you, is what I haven't been able to bring to you up until this point. It is the government's intent on that 10 parts per million for any cannabis extracts, oils, derivatives whatsoever that they want to make. And to me, that's concerning for medical patients, because you shouldn't have to eat 10 whatever or drink 10 vials of oil to get the desired effect. And again, because R.V. Smith, I get where your government's coming from. R.V. Smith never addressed dosing. And the constitutional question wasn't what is the dose of an extract. You know, that was never the question. It was just patients should be able to have cannabis in all its forms, because cannabis, whether it's from the root to fruit or whether it's in shatter form, really it's, you know, I guess shatter is a bad example, maybe a hash form, you know, whatever. It's pure cannabis in all of its forms in accordance with the Supreme Court of Canada. So nothing should ever change that. And what we're seeing now is an influx and a new push for again, hemp. You know, people are saying how great it would be to have a hemp license. I'd say, yeah, but you're going to get headache weed. You're not going to get good flowers and get high CBD. You got to sacrifice one for the other. You have to know what it is that you're hunting for, harvesting for, you're breeding for, whatever the case is. You know, and if you're looking for a plant that's going to produce high CBD, you're gonna and smokable cannabis, you're gonna want something that's autoflowers, that has ruderalis in it. That's something that is very, very important. If your plant is not an autoflower, then you're in a whole nother realm of problems when it comes to CBD, because you're only going to get such a low fraction that even if you did extraction after infusion after infusion after infusion, you'd have to have somehow have bred hemp and cannabis, because you'd have to drop your THC and increase your CBD, and the only way to do that from a breeder's mind would be to backcross into hemp and drive my THC down intentionally. As a breeder, again, you can manipulate the plant to do whatever you want. That's what I love about cannabis. You can't patent evolution. The government's doing it, but you shouldn't be allowed to. These big corporations are patenting strains that don't belong to them, but they shouldn't be allowed to. They're actually patenting the genetic sequence that's in the tissue culture. And that's where it's fucked up. You know, lab coats and scientists and legalization has made it so it's rough on all of us. But there he is. Be damned. Welcome back to the show, and congratulations on last week's win. Again, on this week's 2 wins. I had them written down. It might take me a little while to get this stuff mailed out to you. I think, yeah. But we will get these sent out. And yeah, and Keith, if you're on there, please send me your mailing address. And I think that I'm just going to kill this. I don't know what else to do, because it's the analytics are pretty much holding at, well, I guess they're going up and down. This is what I mean. You see these spikes, 24. You can see them going up and down. I don't necessarily understand it. Yeah, definitely be damned if there's the one thing that we want to make sure that we're, as we sharpen up the shows, we want to make sure that we always just we keep our content clean and crisp. And most important is please understand that as we start to administer the show, and it's not just me administering it. There's actually other people. Whoa, there's other people watching what's going on for me, and I really appreciate that. And they're there for the best interest of everybody watching. They're not there to try and mess up your day, man. They're not there to try and do anything other than make sure nobody else's day gets messed up by coming on the show because they want to come on and have a good time and sash whatever reasoning there is for coming on the show. I mean, I've had everything from old ladies come up and thank me for my show to men my age come up and thank me for doing my show and for doing different things over the years that we've done in activism to get to where we are. So we definitely don't want to shoot anything down or put anything away. I'm doing, my ears are on too. It's good to have you on, Norman. Norm Longstaff. It's Norman? Norman or Norman?
I'm not sure. I would say Norman because he goes by Norman.
I thought it was Norman.
Yeah, I would say Norman.
But he says Norm. So it's Norm Longstaff. Yeah, well, I know it's the thing is cutting off right now. Again, I'm looking at the analytics because this has got to tell me when you guys got to understand getting up every morning early is not necessarily the easiest thing in the world to do. So wanting to target your best time to do your hobby is very important. And shows will be cut off at an hour, don't get me wrong. That's something I've said that they will be done. This morning show is still it's going through again, everything from the administrators getting used to administering a live show down to me carrying content. The show is meant for an hour. We don't want to keep going over an hour each day. We want to pick off what it is that we're going to talk about. You know, and versus just doing some freestyle show that, you know, which we can do as well, you know, but without the engagement in the chat, you know, and people wanting to know more about whatever it is that we're talking about, then we need to change it up, you know, and see where things go. What we'll be doing with the I guess as we move forward is just seeing what happens with the show. Feedback from what you guys think is while it's going, and yeah, I'm gonna be jumping off here and just figuring get on with my day and get dealing with some things that I just got to deal with in my personal life, and maybe then things will be a little bit different. But hopefully you guys stay blessed up, have a good wonderful Monday, get out, have a good time, and just kind of remember, I'll try and punch up even on your worstest and darkest of days. Try and punch up and try to help somebody else out, whether that's via message, whether that's through a phone call, whether that's just saying hello to someone on the street, whatever it is. Try and do something positive for somebody else. And you know, karma's a motherfucker, and it works in many different ways. So yeah. But all said, this is Jason Wilcox closing out. I went a little bit over today, but that was again me trying to dial everything in. Thanks to all the administrators and team members, moderators, managers for helping to get this going. And again, let's just continue to try to sharpen it up and decide again as a team. Do we want to keep a morning show going, or do we want to keep a weekly show going? Because it's awful hard for a morning show to carry content unless we start really gearing ourselves up for it. That all said, this is Jason Wilcox signing out. It is April Fool's 2019, and here's the Coalition documentary trailer.